everyone. My name is Albrian Barnes, and I'm a member of Community Awareness Alliance, and welcome to Community Awareness. This program will be a series of several topics that we as a community would like to address and encourage you to participate in. The beginning show for this series is called Health and Homelessness, and we're here as a panel discussing things within the community concerning homelessness and how it impacts health and vice versa. And so we would like to engage you in this conversation. Last year, we started a day called World Homeless Day in North Carolina to bring awareness to the current the current cause of homelessness within our community, and we're going to begin that dialogue with Miss Ethelyn Baker. Hi, Miss Ethelyn.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you.
This is Miss Ethelyn Baker, who's also a member of Community Awareness Alliance. We also have Christian Carlisle and also Reverend Floyd Wicker. And so we're all going to be talking about this issue. So Miss Ethelyn, I really wanted to start it off with you because as a member of our organization, you were very instrumental in dealing with bringing back the adult the adult care facility, reopening it here in Cumberland County. And one of the things that as I guess a group that is involved in the advocacy for homelessness within the community, we just wanted you to perhaps begin to share some light on what you think, how do you think homelessness affects the health of the community and vice versa?
Well, homelessness definitely has a great impact upon the community because of the fact is that when people are on the street, it affects not only their health but also the city itself or the town in which they're located. In doing my research, I found out from the American Journal of Public Health that a public crisis is playing out very emphatically upon the streets of our cities, not only here in Fayetteville, but throughout the country. And when we say that, we mean that there is a group of people whom is referred to as the unsheltered, or some people have said the unforgotten homeless. That is, people who are not in shelters, who may be on the street, under bridges, or not have any place to live. And personally speaking, I see here in Fayetteville, I may call them the invisible homeless because we see people and we pass by and we act like they're not there. We act like they're not present. And even here in Fayetteville, for an example, I like to just give this illustration. Downtown Fayetteville, near the library, there is a couple, well, it's a lady and her son who's been living in a car, a van, for I know 5 years to my knowledge. They were living in one van, but now they have a new van and they're living in that particular van. But yet the city officials are not doing anything. People go there, see them, act like they're not there. So that's what I may call the invisible or the unforgotten homeless.
And that's a great point that you're bringing because we're even talking about the location downtown by the library and things of that nature. And last year for World Homeless Day, one of the things that we were able to do was we showcased a film. And it was talking about how the homeless people, the film basically was saying how homeless people within the community got into the library for shelter to, because it got so cold in a particular city within the United States. And so we have people out here who need the resources and have a difficult time accessing those resources. So it's so easy for them to fall under the radar, so to speak, and as you said, invisible, because it almost appears that they're voiceless, even though we're continuously raising these topics. How then, because a lot of times they seek shelter or refuge during the daytime in libraries, what kind of what kind of causality, for lack of a better word, do you think that brings about when you have people who need shelter, need resources, but the only place they seem to be able to find refuge is within the public library, which is a shared space within the community.
I understand. In other words, um, there are causes, things that may lead to homelessness, for example. And one of the major causes is mental illness. For example, schizophrenia is a particular, specific mental illness that may lead to homelessness. If a person faces something in life, and we all are human beings, and we all have emotions, and we all may be going through something, but if they face something, they can no longer cope with that, then schizophrenia, for example, will set in. And then if they have this mental illness, they're not able to get a job. They're not able to follow through on doing what they need to do. Or the disability may worsen, for example. If you have a problem, for example, let me just say now, think in terms of the situation in our country today. Suicide is one of the major causes of death. Recently, there was a report as far as the number. In fact, I read that today. There was a report wherein the mortality rate is really decreasing, but only for a couple of months. But the major cause of death now in this country is suicide.
Wow.
So if a person has a serious problem, that particular problem becomes more serious. And if they're on the street, it gets worse. And thinking in terms of what you were saying regarding taking over the library with a group of people, we know many times people do use the library as a place of refuge. And being a public facility, they cannot force them out on the street. They cannot say, leave the library regardless of what problems they may cause or how they may affect the patrons. They cannot, because it's a public place. But for an example, let's say if someone is recuperating from an illness, let's say just say diabetes, one example. Once the person leaves the hospital, they will have to recuperate. But if they have no place to go to lie down, for example, most shelters you have to leave during the day.
Yes.
So the persons are recuperating from an illness, they cannot stay there. Therefore, they're not able to follow through on whatever advice they're given as to how to take care of themselves to become completely well. If they're not able to lie down, go to sleep, then they're going to have problems with their limbs. Therefore, we find those particular problems can develop into other problems. Your blood not being able to circulate properly, then you're going to have problems with the swelling of the legs. So that's just an example of how the homelessness can affect one's health.
So in other words, you're basically saying that if a person has some kind of disease or ailment, homelessness can exacerbate the problem and make it worse because they don't have the ability to self-heal and things of that nature. So Christian, as a student at Fayetteville State, because of the economy and things of that nature, students are finding it more difficult to be able to find the resources to go to school and things like that.
Excuse me.
Do you see Fayetteville State or the students here at Fayetteville State being impacted by homelessness in any way, or can you speak to anything associated with young people and perhaps homelessness?
Yeah, I mean, and the whole thing is about resources. And, just what can you do and what can't you. You have students that may live off campus and may not be able to afford a meal plan. So there's that. Whatever students you have living in the area, there's still not a grocery store on Murchison Road. So, that's one of the things right there. Just the access to the things that we really need. Even toiletries, that's with anybody. If you can barely afford food, sometimes you have to make those choices between, what you, like I said, necessities and, the things like that. Like I said, as far as funding to go to school, financial aid, it's just one of those things that, you may have to come out of pocket some.
Right.
There may be some left over. And like I said, it comes down to a choice of choosing, when that unfortunately is. Yeah.
So, like going back to what Ms. Ethelyn was saying, is that because homelessness is like the extreme end of poverty,
Yeah.
but not being able to have the resources to maintain yourself or to deal with the mental issue of depression and different things that may, be exacerbated because of lack and different things like that. One of the places that we sometimes look to, Reverend Wicker, is the church and things of that nature. Is there any kind of input or anything that you've seen being in the church or yourself as far as homelessness is as far as homelessness is concerned, and how it intertwines with the health of our community as a whole?
Well, I think just thinking about homelessness, my first job out of college was working at a rescue mission. So part of and I remember one of my duties in that job was to go to the local homeless shelters and to try to get men to recruit men to become part of our program. And so that was part of like my daily or weekly duty. And so I understand the need. There's a broader need for social programs, mental health, things that speak to a broader kind of broader dimension of our holistic needs, whether it's food, shelter, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse counseling, like a holistic approach to wellness. And I see the church as a way of being an advocate for the homeless, because Jesus talks about in the Bible, he talks about the Spirit of God is upon me to preach the gospel to the poor. So to set at liberty those who are held captive. So there's a huge component to the preaching of the gospel, and the church. There's a role that the church has to play or should play. But primarily, we can be an advocate. We can share our resources, because if you think about churches, I mean, we take in a lot of finances each Sunday, sometimes even on Wednesday. And I was fortunate enough when I was here in Fayetteville, when I was working as an assistant pastor at one of the First Baptist Church here, I was amazed at how many people came through our doors every day looking for some type of assistance.
Wow.
And I was blessed because I got a chance to see firsthand how that assistance helped people. And so I think the church has a crucial role in advocacy, promoting, trying to get health care, because we not only see this in the homeless, but we also see it in our school systems. So students need counseling. They need help to kind of prevent suicide. I mean, they need these kinds of services, holistic services, that will enable them they give them a fair chance at being successful. Because, I mean, even now I work on a college campus, and speaking of homelessness, there are students who are going to school. They're registering, and they never go to school. There are students who are homeless, and they're on the rolls, but they can't pay their bills. And I mean, so you're seeing it in every kind of section in society.
So I guess this conversation to me is just showing that when you say homelessness, as you said earlier, Ms. Ethelyn, it's unsheltered, but unsheltered isn't the only type of homelessness. You have people who are sheltered, but they may not have the permanence or the security of being attached to somewhere that is shelter, whether they're living on someone's couch, or like Reverend Floyd and Christian was saying, whether there are students who are depending on their financial aid to cover for them, and it may not be sufficient to provide them a place to stay and things of that nature. So I guess everybody having some familiarity with homelessness, there seems to be, in my opinion, a disconnect with homelessness as an issue, and then how do we galvanize the community and our public officials to address this issue?
Well, personally speaking, I think there must be empathy among the public officials, because we know there are many organizations that reach out to do whatever they can to help the homeless. For example, Reverend Wicker was talking about the church. Yes, the church does things, feeds the people. It has an opportunity. They have an opportunity to clothe, provide food, counseling. But on the other hand, those persons who are on the street, they're unsheltered. Churches, many times, and I'm speaking in terms of my experience here, what I see, they do provide shelter at various times. But there are many people who are part of this particular category that still need shelter other times. For example, we were speaking in terms of illness, recuperating. I was a member of the Interfaith Network at one time. It may have a different name now, but there were churches who are a network of churches. That particular time was about 13 churches, and persons would go from one church to another for a week. The churches that volunteered to be part of this network, the people that were considered homeless would go from different churches, stay a week, then another church, and when their turn came, would do the same thing. But yet those people had to leave the church during the morning. They would come in the evening. For an example, at that time, they would come in on Sunday. They would stay at the church for a whole week. But they would have to leave in the morning. Then they would come back in the evening. But then that is providing a place for them during the night. But what about during the day? And that's what I think the officials need to come together. For an example, in Fayetteville, Cumberland County, county commissioners, the Fayetteville City Council need to come together and agree on how they're going to use the funds, which they already have, to build a center. Now, some people, it's a question, a division as to whether we should have a day center or housing first. Now, according to the information from the Journal of Public Health, the Housing and Urban Development recommends housing first, wherein the people are able to get housing, who are able to have assistance without any prerequisites. Now, there's a controversy in Fayetteville as to whether there should be housing first, the plan, housing first, or a day center. So, but yet on the other hand, the officials cannot come together, will not come together to make a decision regarding how the money is going to be spent. The mayor had talked about tiny houses, but yet in order for this to be done, you have to agree. The funds are there, but it must be an agreement as to how this is going to be done.
Okay. Well, this is such a passionate conversation and such an involved conversation, and we can delve deeper into it at another time on our next program. But once again, we'd like to thank you for tuning in, and I'd like to say thank you again for to the guests for such a hearty conversation on this sensitive topic within our community. Once again, thank you from Community Awareness Alliance, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.